Shalom Aleichem. We'd like today to touch upon a question of the narrative of the Torah. When is it that our nation has to go to a war and wipe out the enemy, and when we are not permitted to fight a war against those that harass us and even tried in the past to wipe us out? It says in the Pasuk, Tzaror et Midyanim v'kitem otam. You should go and fight the Midyanim and try to kill them. That's for Midian. Midian, we have to wipe out. But when we're talking about other nations like Moab and Ammon, it says over there in the Pasuk about not marrying them. We're not permitted to marry even up to the 10th generation. לא יבוא עמוני ומואבי בקהל אדוני, גם דור עשירי לא יבוא להם בקהל אדוני, עד עולם. We're not allowed to marry them forever. עמוני ומואבי. What did they do? So the Pasuk says, על דבר אשר לא קידמו אתכם בלחם ובמים, בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים, ואשר שכר עליך את בלעם בן באור, מפתור ארם נהריים לקללך. So we see over here that the Torah has two nations, Ammon and Moab, that we're not allowed to marry. Then, same idea would apply also to Amalek. Amalek also, it says over there, זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים. You have to remember what Amalek did to us when we came out of Mitzrayim, and the command by Amalek would be to also completely wipe them out. תמחה את זכר עמלק מתחת השמיים, לא תשכח. Okay, so we have the nations that we're talking about. Midian, we should go and fight a war with them. Ammon and Moab, we're not allowed to marry them. And we're talking about Amalek, that we have to try to wipe their memory from the earth. But when we're talking about Edom and Mitzrayim, it says a different thing, which really needs an explanation. When we're talking about Edom, it says in the Pasuk, in Parashat Ki Tetzeh, לא תתעב אדומי כי אחיך הוא. We're not allowed to hate anybody from Edom. לא תתעב מצרי כי גר היית בארצו. Also same would apply to Mitzrayim, the Egyptian. We're not allowed to be מתעב. מתעב means to push them away, which means we are permitted to marry them, especially after 3 generations. There are guidelines, but we see that they have a past, Mitzrim and the Edomi. We need to put in perspective what is it that there are those that you allowed and should be and commanded to fight and wipe out, and those that we're not allowed. So over here we see there's a common denominator between all of us, all of these, that the Midrash already points out. The Midrash says that Gadol HaMachtio Yoter Min HaOrgo. It's worse to cause somebody to sin than to kill him totally, to go and fight and wipe him out. And therefore, the idea behind it would be that when you wipe somebody out, you kill him, the Midrash says you kill him in this world. But when you cause somebody to sin, not only that you are killing him in this world, you are killing him also to the world to come, which means he's totally lost. He doesn't have a share, not in this world and not in the world to come. Obviously, that is much, much worse. And therefore, the Midrash says that the Torah over here divides the nations into those that cause us to sin and those that didn't. What we see more than that is that the way they cause us to sin is completely immoral, which means the Torah guidelines is like today you have guidelines of conduct of war, how one is permitted to fight a war and how a nation is not permitted, what's allowed to do to war prisoners and what's not allowed, and so on and so forth, which were determined in the Geneva Convention. And we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu also has conducts of war, what is permitted to do and what is not permitted to do, and those that violated that, we should fight them to the teeth. And that's what it says in our parasha. In our parasha it says, "Tzaror et hamidyanim v'kitem otam." What did they do so bad? Why is it? What's the big deal? I mean, they try to defend themselves from the conquering nation of Israel that's coming to take over. And when they saw that in the beginning of Parashat Balak, when they saw what Am Israel did to the Emori, which means they went to fight them and they wiped them out. ויאמר מואב אל זקני מידן נתן לכחו הקהל את כל סביבותינו. They were afraid. Moab was afraid that Am Israel would do the same thing to the nation of Moab. So they got together, Midian, to help them out, and Midian did whatever they could in order to defend themselves from this new nation that comes in town, the new player that comes out of nowhere in order to take territory from these people, this oppression new nation. So what is so bad? And the answer is, what did they do bad? כי צוררים לכם בנכליהם אשר נקלו לכם על דבר פאור. Which means, Rashi says, what does it mean כי צוררים הם לכם בנכליהם? Rashi says, שהפקירו בנותיהם לזנות כדי להטותכם אחר פאור. Which means, what they did so bad was they caused Am Yisrael to sin with their daughters. They sent their daughters, the Midyanim, in order to cause Am Yisrael to sin in a very trickery way and lure them into the Avera in such ways that were predetermined, and they planned it very well. And eventually they caused them also to sin by the idol of Peor. That's something that's not in the playbook. You're not allowed to do such a thing. This is in Hashem's eye. The immorality is out of the conduct of war rules, and therefore this nation should be wiped out. צרור את המדיינים וכיתם אותם. Why? כי צוררים הם לכם ונכליהם אשר נקלו לכם בדבר פאור, ועל דבר כוזבי בת נשיא מדיין אחותם העמוקה ביום הקפה על דבר פאור. Which means, since they caused Am Israel to sin, they lured them into the tents in order to make them sin in different ways. And that's exactly what happened also with the other nations. Let's talk, for instance, about Amalek that we mentioned before. So what is it about Amalek that Hashem is so angry and asks us to wipe them out completely? It says in the pasuk, זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים. What is it that you have to remember, and that is the reason we have to wipe them out? אשר קרחה בדרך. What does it mean קרחה בדרך? Rashi says, לשון קרי וטומאה. קרחה is לשון of טומאה, impurity. What did they do? שהיה מטמאן במשכב זכור. He would violate the men of Israel, especially those that are weak. ויזנב בך כל הנחשלים אחריך. They took the נחשלים. נחשלים means the weak, חלש. They took the weak and they violated them. In immorality is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not accept in any possible way, and therefore they are doomed in Hashem's eyes. They should be wiped out, and they have no forgiveness. And that is what we found here. And what about the nations of Ammon uMoav? לא יבוא עמוני ומואבי בקהל השם, גם דור עשירי לא יבוא להם. Why is it that Hashem is so angry with Ammon and Moab? What did they do that we're not allowed to marry them forever? So it says here, על דבר אשר לא קידמו אתכם בלחם ובמים. They did not offer you any bread and water בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים. When you came out of Mitzrayim, they were there, and they were, when Am Yisrael came close to them, they did not come out to offer Am Yisrael food and drinks. But that is something that is strange, because there's a pasuk that contradicts that in Dvarim, Parashat Dvarim. In Parashat Dvarim it says, אוכל בכסף תשבירני, ואכלתי ומים בכסף תיתן לי, ושתיתי, רק אעברה ברגלי. So Am Yisrael is approaching Sichon and tells them, give me food, give me water, and I'll buy from you. כאשר עשו לי בני עשיו יושבים בשעיר, והמואבים יושבים באר. Just like Esav and Moab did to me. But Moab, they offered bread and water? They didn't. We just learned in the pasuk over here, "Al dvar asher lo kidmu etchem balechem uvamayim." They didn't offer bread and water. So why does it say differently in the beginning of Dvarim? It says over there, "Kasher asu li bnei Esav yeshvim b'seim v'hamoavim, ochel b'kesef tashbiren." Give me food, give me drink, let me buy from you, just like Moab did to me. Or Chaim explains here in Parashat Kitetze, he says the following: they did give them water and food, but they charged for it. So what's wrong with that? It says here, מה שמכרו להם, אור החיים הקדוש, מה שמכרו להם לחם ומים, this that they sold עם ישראל bread and water, היה להנאתם של מואב, כלפתותם להפילם באריות, in order to cause them to sin with the girls of Midian. So they lured them into the tents of, they told them there's food and drinks to buy over here, and that's Am Yisrael, the men came in, and that is where they fell in the sin. So we see again that since Moab and Ammon were part of the plan of causing Am Yisrael to sin, that is something that's not permitted in any way in Hashem's eyes. And it says again in Chazal, Gadol ha'machtir yoter min ha'orgo, since you used such techniques to cause Am Yisrael to sin, as Bil'am already offered the idea that you can't defeat Am Yisrael unless you cause them to sin. Therefore, that's something that Hashem does not forgive. But when we're talking about Mitzrayim and we're talking about Edom, it says over there that you should not reject them. לא תתעב אדומי ולא תתעב מצרי. Why not? Because when they went to fight against Am Yisrael, they didn't use such immorality techniques. And therefore, Edom, as evil as they were, and Mitzrayim, as evil as they were, that they enslaved us for so many years, but nations do enslave other nations. Nations do go fight and kill other nations. That's the nature of the world from the very beginning. But some things are not permitted to do, and that is the guideline that HaKadosh Baruch Hu rules. When you fight a war, fight in order to kill. When you try to defend your nation, that's permitted. You do whatever is needed. But you can't start doing things that are immoral. You can't start violating men. You can't start violating women, and definitely not children. And therefore, such things are not acceptable in Hashem's eyes whatsoever. Needless to say that when we're talking about today's time, our enemy are using all type of techniques of immorality, and therefore, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates Amalek for doing such a thing, זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים אשר קרך בדרך, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not forgive them. Obviously, the same approach goes to them as well. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates them with all his heart, but moreover, Amalek at least didn't brag about their sins that they did with Am Yisrael, but those vicious, ugly, disgusting animals that are fighting today, Am Yisrael, they are bragging about all the immorality. More than that, they claim that it's part of their spiritual command to go and seduce other people or violate other people in such ways, and therefore we should remember, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to wipe out Amalek, these evil people should not also be living under the sun.